Good evening, everyone. Myself, Pritili, a trainer at Modak Trainer Academy. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to today's insightful webinar on the topic, the concept of God in Saiva Siddhanta. This profound philosophical tradition offers a rich and nuanced understanding of the divine, exploring the relationship between God, the soul, and the universe. We are truly honored to have with us our distinguished speaker, Dr. Murugesan. Dr. Murugesan is a distinguished academic associate with the Department of Philosophy and Comparative Religion at Visva-Bharati University, Shantiniketan. He specializes in Indian philosophy and comparative religion, with a particular focus on classical philosophical traditions. Through his research and teaching, Dr. Murugesan has contributed significantly to the deeper understanding and interpretation of Indian philosophical thought, engaging both traditional perspective and contemporary discourse. His scholarly work reflects a commitment to exploring the philosophical foundation of religion and their relevance in today's world. With his extensive knowledge and scholarly insight, we are confident that today's session will provide us with a meaningful exploration of Saiva Siddhanta and its concept of God. Now, without any further delay, I warmly invite Dr. Murugesan to deliver his lecture. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do you able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
I hope I'm audible to all.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. A very good evening to all. Indeed, it's my joy and privilege to be here. This particular webinar on the concept of God in Saiva Siddhanta. Before I begin my talk, I would like to thank all the participants who have participating this particular webinar at this late evening, that too on Sunday. Thank you so much for taking your time to be part of this webinar. And I would like to thank the Modak Trainer Academy organizing the webinar on Saturday, Sunday, and Wednesday. It's very interesting to know about their contribution towards academic in multiple levels. I'm very much thankful to the organizer, Modak Trainer Academy. So this particular evening, I would like to talk on the concept of God in Saiva Siddhanta. You may remember that the last lecture or the last talk that I was delivering at one of the webinar of this Modak Trainer Academy is just an introduction to Saiva Siddhanta, where I was just bringing out all the background of Saiva Siddhanta, the scripture of Saiva Siddhanta, the canonical or authoritative scriptures of Saiva Siddhanta, and I was just giving you all the background of the other than schools of Saiva Siddhanta. There are multiple other schools in Shaivism, and those are all the things just I have brought into a kind of brief introduction to you. In the series of that particular lecture, I would like to thought of to just discuss with the concept of God in Saiva Siddhanta. As we understand the concept of God in Saiva Siddhanta, it is one of the very important philosophical concept to begin Saiva Siddhanta, in a way I would say that. So before I just get into this talk, I would like to just tell you there are two different sets of sources that I have referred to talk on this particular, the topic on concept of God in Saiva Siddhanta. The first one set is primary sources. The primary sources, I would say that Tirumular's Tirumandiram, it's one of the important source that I have referred. It's a primary source that I have referred for this speech. The second one, Sivanyana Bodham of Sivanyana, written by Meghanda. It's the second one. And the third one is Sivanyana Mahabhadyam of Sivanyana Munivar. These are the three major primary texts need to be referred when we talk on the concept of God in Saiva Siddhanta. No other option, because these primary texts are very important. So Tirumula's Tirumandiram, Meghanda's Sivanyana Bodham, Sivanyana Siddhyar or Munivar, we understand Sivanyana Mahabhadyam. Other than that, there are few secondary sources, particularly K. Vajravelu, Saiva Siddhanta. The book has been published in 1951 by Annamala University. The other one is K. Sivaraman's Saivism, the Philosophical Perspectives, which was published in 1973 by Motilal Banarsidass Press. So these are the two, secondary sources that I have referred to prepare this particular talk. As we begin the concept of God in Saiva Siddhanta, this is very important. We need to remember the authoritative scripture or canonical scriptures of Shaivism or Saiva Siddhanta. Canonical scriptures. When I say canonical scriptures, the first, authoritative scriptures we understand as 12 Tirumurais. I said in the last, talk also. The second one is 14 Sastras, philosophical treatises. 12 Tirumurais, they are known as the Stotras, which were written as a poetical hymn by Saiva saints, very particularly, 63 Nayanmas were contributing a lot in that particular sacred hymn, we understand that. On the other side, there are 14 philosophical treatises, they are also important, which explains very philosophically the Saiva Siddhanta. So this must be very important to keep in our mind, the authoritative scriptures of Saiva Siddhanta. And now, from the authoritative scriptures of Saiva Siddhanta, very clearly narrates about God, the existence of God, the attributes of God, the functions of God. These all the things are very much explained in this text, the primary sources. 12 sacred scriptures of Saiva Siddhanta, 14 philosophical treatises of Saiva Siddhanta. And most of the texts or most of the books written on Saiva Siddhanta were on the foundations of or the base of these books. That's very, very important, so that we will be very clear how Saiva Siddhanta philosophy describe the concept of God. This is most important. Now, I would like to just talk on the concept of God only here, not very much relating to the Pasu, which is known as soul, the concept of soul. And I'm not going to deal with the bondage and liberation, what Saiva Siddhanta talks about it. In future, if time permits, we may see as a series of lectures, if at all. So now, tonight, just I would like to restrict to only the concept of God. Now, as we start the concept of God in Saiva Siddhanta, we supposed to take from Tirumular's Tirumandiram. This is most important. Tirumular's Tirumandiram, the book name is called Tirumandiram, which was written by Tirumular. The last talk also I was quoting, and there I would like to just make a small corrections over there. The hymn which I am going to, narrate or take the concept of God and the three perennial entities from that same hymn I'm going to. Last time I said 1115, actually not exactly 1115, it is supposed to be 115. So I would like to correct it here. So now Tirumandiram 115 very clearly narrates the entire Saiva Siddhanta philosophy, the three perennial entities which include God, and this is the way it goes. I would like to just again recite in Tamil and I would like to paraphrase in English. In Tamil, it goes like this: Padi Pasu Pasamenum Pahar Moondril, Padiyinai Pol Pasu Pasam Anadi, Padiyinai Sendranuga Pasu Pasam, Padiyanugil Pasu Pasam Nillave. These are the four stanzas, four lines of this particular hymn, 115 hymn of Tirumandiram, written by Tirumular. What is exactly it narrates? According to this particular poem, says that there are three perennial entities, three fundamental entities, three basic entities of Saiva Siddhanta. From this particular poem itself, we can understand it's not a kind of Advaitic Saivism or monistic Saivism or this philosophy. It is pluralistic or in a way dualistic. It's a dualistic school of Shaivism. Three perennial entities are explained here. The first perennial entity, the fundamental entity is Pati, who is called God. The second one is Pasu, which is known as soul. The other one is the bondage, that is Pasa. That Pasa is supposed to be three in layer, that is Anava, Karma, Maya. Anava is understood as ego, Karma is understood as action, and Maya is understood as the bondage which is materially connected. So now, these three are perennial. These three are eternal. Padi, Pasu, Pasam. All the three are eternal according to Saiva Siddhanta. Now, tonight I would like to just highlight on the first important perennial, the basic foundational entity of Saiva Siddhanta is Pati, that is God. Now, who is God? Now, God is understood Lord Shiva. Saiva Siddhanta, by name, the Lord, which is known as Pati, or whom known as Pati, is understood Lord Shiva. So now God exists. This is a strong message that Saiva Siddhanta conveys. That is very, very important here. God exists. So now Padi is God, that God is Lord Shiva. Now, when we talk about Pati, we understand that there is a relationship between Pati and Pasu, that is soul. There is a relationship between Pati and even we understand that how the Pasu supposed to be liberated from the bondage and liberation also. So now we understand very clearly God exists and that God is by name Lord Shiva here according to Saiva Siddhanta. Now, name may be disputed in a way with other tradition, but in Saiva Siddhanta very clearly talks about by name Lord Shiva. Now, as we understand with this base, there are few things just I would like to highlight tonight. The existence of God. How Saiva Siddhanta explains the existence of God. This is very important. The second one, I will be highlighting the attributes of God. The third one is the functions of God. Now, these all the things are having multiple subdivisions. Though they are very three, but still it has a lot of subdivisions. I would like to summarize it as simple as possible. So the first one is when we talk about God, Lord Shiva exists. Now the existence of God. What the philosophy of Saiva Siddhanta talks about the existence of God. That's what we are going to understand it. When we talk about God and the existence of God, is a very big question. For many centuries, one of the debatable, in otherwise I would say that unsolved question. When we say one of the questions is called the existence of God. One side, just we understand, does God exist or not? If God exists, how to prove the existence of God? On the other side, how to prove or disprove the non-existence of God? What is the relationship between God and human being, or including world? Whether the world is created by God or not. There are multiple questions and chain linked questions we understand in relation to the existence of God. In the Indian philosophy as well as the Western philosophy, we understand that it is not only restricted to only the realm of philosophy. Anyone can just, who are interested to know, that they debate, they discuss, they try to understand in many ways. So that's why I said that one of the big or disputable or unsolved question, which is known as God, particularly the existence of God. With this background, if we see that, of course, if I get into the other Indian philosophical schools, if we understand that outrightly Charvaka denies the existence of God. Of course, we understand Buddhism also does not accept the existence of God or the creator God. Jainism, in a way, there is no creator God. But the liberated souls have been venerated in a way, but still not the creator God that Jainism talks about it. These all heterodox school or Nastika school of Indian philosophical system. On the other side, if we see that orthodox, even there also we understand that Sankhya does not, you know, go in the line of the existence of God. They deny Mimamsakas as well. But there are some explanation just goes like this. Mimamsakas denies the creator God, the great God, who is known as Ishvara, but not the minor gods and goddesses who are known as Devatas. So these are all the kind of interpretation. Schools to school, it differs. We understand in the Indian philosophical system of Astika and Nastika. When we come to Saiva Siddhanta strongly holds that God exists, the existence of God. Now, to prove that existence of God, Saiva Siddhanta very simplest way philosophically explains in a two different levels. I would like to just summarize it. The first one is the transcendent and immanence of God. Saiva Siddhanta talks about under the existence of God, the transcendence of God, the immanence of God. There are two different levels. When Saiva Siddhanta addresses the transcendence of God, it is beyond the material comprehension. It is beyond. In other words, we can say that it is beyond that, you cannot relate to the world which we exist. So transcendental. So God is transcendental. Lord Shiva is transcendental. If we ask a question to the Saiva Siddhanti, okay, you say that God is transcendental. How do I understand it as a human being? Then the Saiva Siddhantians gives a kind of answers to that question as, you see, it is mind is limited. The limitation of mind may not able to comprehend the transcendental nature of that God. So they relate to, the limited mind of human being in relation to the transcendence of God. So God is transcendental. Since the mind is limited, the transcendental God may not be able to be comprehended. And still, They try to explain it, the relationship between, the mind of an individual and to the ultimate reality, the second level, which is known as immanence. So since human being, particularly the mind of human being, is limited, the understanding of God would be possible in relation to first step. It can get into the spiritual evolution. They will come to the transcendental nature of God. That will take time. Saiva Siddhantians argues that it is possible human can understand the transcendental nature of the God. They will have a union with that Pati, but still at the beginning of our stage, it has to go from the beginning, the bottom of that layer. So the bottom of the layer is supposed to be from the immanence. Saiva Siddhanta in simplest way says that the immanence to transcendence, not all of the sudden transcendence. The transcendent nature of that God cannot be comprehended all of the sudden. It has its own spiritual evolution. They use a phrase like spiritual evolution. It's supposed to evolve. The evolution of that maturity. In other words, they would say that spiritual maturity. So now, the existence of God has been explained in Saiva Siddhanta from the stage of immanent to the next level, to the transcendent. So now, that's why we understand the existence of God in relation to transcendence and immanence. So now, immanent, when it says that, where we try to understand that the immanence of God in relation to three stages, they explain it. The immanence of God in Saiva Siddhanta in three layers. The first one they understand as Nishkala. Nishkala we understand or translate as formless, the formlessness of God. The second one, Nishkala and Sakala, which means Nishkala is formless, Sakala is form. There is a form. So it is mixture of Nishkala and Sakala. The third stage, which is very easy to access, that is Sakala, formed, the God in form. Now, these are the three levels they explain the immanence of God in a way, and then the spiritual evolution takes them to reach to the level of transcendent or transcendental nature of that God. Now, Nishkala is formless. There is no form as such. Niskala and Sakala in Saiva Siddhanta and the other schools of Shaivism, we understand that in the form of Shiv Linga. The worship of Linga comes there, which is, formless and form. Whereas the third stage, Sakala, we understand most of the anthropomorphic understanding of God, where, for example, Artanariswara form, Lord Shiva, Shakti, in the same, form we understand as Arthanarishwar. Now there are many other forms we understand in Sakala. So, according to Saiva Siddhanta, the existence of God supposed to begin from Sakala to the next stage, Nishkala Sakala, and to the next stage, Nishkala, which is formless. And then the spiritual evolution takes to the higher level. This is the way a person supposed to understand and grow in the knowledge of existence of God. Just I made it very simple here. So the first concept under the concept of God, the existence of God, Saiva Siddhanta explains the transcendental and immanence of Lord Shiva. The next one, I would like to again briefly summarize the attributes of God. Attributes of God is understood as from other philosophical traditions. Lord Shiva is omniscience, omnipotent, omnipresence, almighty. Those are all the very basic natures of God we understand that. Along with Saiva Siddhanta understands the attributes of God as, you know, in relation to Sachidananda, Satchit Ananda. As we understand from other traditions, Saiva Siddhanta also explains in Tamil term Sachidanandam, where we understand that absolute truth, absolute existence in relation to consciousness and bliss. With the nature of Sachidananda, we understand that. And very particularly, Saiva Siddhanta explains about God in relation to love, Shiva in relation to love. In other words, I would say that Shiva and love cannot be separated. Lord Shiva and love interrelated with each other. Saiva Siddhantin strongly believe that. I would like to just highlight a poem here from Tirumandiram of Tirumular. He says that when he addresses Lord Shiva and love, he sings like this. The poem goes like this. I would like to recite it in Tamil and then I paraphrase it in English. He says that அன்பும் சிவமும் இரண்டென்பர் அறிவிலார் அன்பே சிவமாவதாரும் அறிந்திலார் அன்பே சிவமாவதாரும் அறிந்தபின் அன்பே சிவமாய் அமர்ந்திருப்பாரே. What is exactly here? The first line again says that it is the ignorant who does not have the knowledge that says Lord Shiva and love both are different. It's not the right way to understand. Tirumular says, the first stanza. Lord Shiva and love, one and the same. There is no difference at all. So, அன்பும் சிவமும் இரண்டென்பர் அறிவிலா. அன்பே சிவமாவதாரும் அறிந்திலா. Actually, the fact is, Lord Shiva is love. The love is Lord Shiva. The third stanza goes like this. அன்பே சிவமாய் அறிந்தபின் அன்பே சிவமாய் அமர்ந்திருப்பாரே. Now, if a person who comes to know the relationship between Lord Shiva and love, definitely the person understands rightly who is Lord Shiva. So now the simplest way to understand under this particular, attributes of God, Saiva Siddhanta very clearly takes into very common understanding, because the concept of love is very much related to the day-to-day life. Now, the love, how supposed to be, the genuine love, how supposed to be in relation to that God that they are relating to, so that it is easy to understand, it is easy to relate the concept of love with the concept of God, concept of Shiva. So now the attributes of God, along with omnipotent, omniscience, omnipresence, we understand that God is full of love, and it is supposed to be. And the nature of the devotee also full of love. That comes the other reflection. It is supposed to be. So now this is the way we understand the attributes of God in Saiva Siddhanta. So the one side, the existence of God. On the other side, we understand the attributes of God. The third important thing I would like to highlight under the concept of God in Saiva Siddhanta is the functions of God, the function of Lord Shiva. Saiva Siddhanta explains the functions of God into 5 levels. There are 5 functions of God. Most of the time, many other traditions, the philosophical traditions, we understand the functions of God. Predominantly, we understand that creation, protection, destruction. God who is the creator, God who is the protector, God who is the destroyer, dissolution. That's what we understand. That very general. Saiva Siddhanta also in the beginning takes these three roles, the functions. Lord Shiva is the creator, Lord Shiva is the protector, Lord Shiva is the destroyer or dissolution, the person who corrects it, corrects. Dissolution, destroyer here understood in a way of correction. Along with these three, there are two more functions that Saiva Siddhanta explains in a peculiar manner. The fourth one, which is known as obscuration. God obscures. Lord Shiva obscures. The fifth one is bestowal. Lord Shiva bestows. Bestows is grace. The Tamil term is known as Arul. Now, as we know that the creation, protection, destruction, as very general we understand in relation to other philosophical traditions of India. And the same thing we can relate to Lord Shiva here in Saiva Siddhanta. I'm not just much explaining over there, but I would like to highlight on these two, the last two, the fourth one and the fifth one of the functions of Lord Shiva. The fourth one is obscuration. 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 Obscures. What is exactly here? Saiva Siddhantians explain this particular function of God in the process of bondage and liberation. As we know that the soul is bonded. The soul is eternally bonded. The bondage of anava, the bondage of karma, the bondage of maya. These three are there. So now the soul is under the bondage. Now, in the process of liberation, there are many stages are there. In the process of liberation, where Lord Shiva's one of the important function we understand in relation to the liberation of soul from the bondage, that obscuration plays a major role. How obscuration? Saiva Siddhantins explains obscuration in two levels actually. The first one, as we understand, it is under the bondage. I mean, soul is under the bondage. Now, in order to realize the self-realization of that soul, to come into that particular freedom, there is a first stage, the freedom of soul, the nature of freedom of soul itself obscured by God for some time. Now, if we ask the question, what is a limitation of some time? Now, some time in the sense which we understand that it depends on there comes karma. The karma in relation to samsara chakra, the recycle of birth. Now, it's a very big process, actually, very big theory. We understand that. Karma theory also need to be understood very clearly. The samsara chakra, which we talk about, the punarjanma, which we understand the recycle of birth also need to be understood in order to understand obscuration. So now, karma, punarjanma, and obscuration comes there. Now, as we understand, these are aligned in a same line. Aligned in a same line. Now, Saiva Siddhantin says that the obscuration is here, that the very nature of the soul supposed to be free. Because the original nature of the soul is full of free, full of knowledge, full of bliss, ananda. So now this is the very nature of the soul. Now, in order to grow its maturity, here comes the spiritual maturity. So Saiva Siddhantins explains about the spiritual maturity here. So in order to mature, there are, the time that God himself obscures that original nature so that the nature of the soul tries its level best to find out the way the maturity is supposed to be. Now it is something like, to get into that maturity, the role of obscuration of God plays a major role. So now, once that maturity comes into that line, of course, obscuration of Lord completely removed, and where the next stage that soul travels towards liberation. So now the understanding of obscuration comes here. That is the first part and the first way of interpretation in Saiva Siddhanta. God himself obscures the original nature of soul in order to get the maturity. That's a symbol, or in a one line, I would say that God himself obscures the original nature of the soul in order to get its own maturity. So to get that maturity, that obscuration is needed. This is the interpretation of Saiva Siddhanta when we understand the fourth function of, God. The second interpretation, again, obscuration, goes with a group of Saiva Siddhantins further. It is not only that God himself hides, God himself obscures himself, not to show to Lord, not to show to the soul. I would like to again repeat it. God himself hides, not immediately shown or not come that closer to that God, because again that soul needs some time of maturity. So at one point, we understand that obscuration means God himself obscures the soul's original nature in order to get maturity. On the other interpretation, God himself hides means Lord Shiva is not just favorable to him or her, so that that maturity just comes up furthermore, and therefore God himself hides. Now, if we understand the both the side comes into one particular point, that in order to get maturity, the maturity, when we understand here, the maturity in relation to the bondage and liberation we are talking about. The bondage and liberation, when we talk about the bondage and liberation in Saiva Siddhanta, the soul needs that level of maturity to come up to realize the self-realization. The self-realization is most important, as we understand from Kashmir Saivism. In the same way, as Kashmir Saivism talks about self-realization, in the same way we understand Saiva Siddhanta also talks about self-realization. These stages are there, and one of the stages we understand that the function of God is known as obscuration, and the obscuration is very important according to Saiva Siddhanta. Now, it takes time, of course. Sometimes for people, it may be, some multiple births. So many birth and death, it is involved with that. Recycle of birth and death, there comes Punarjanma. Now, how long that obscuration? Not sure about it. It depends on the karma of an individual, where the person comes to that near to that particular stage of liberation. So these all the things are measured, very much measured in Saiva Siddhanta. Now I would like to just get into the fifth function of Lord Shiva is bestowal. Bestowal, bestowal, bestowing grace. It is in Tamil, we understand Arulal. God bestows his grace, and where the soul is completely liberated from the bondage. The bestowal of grace of God. Very important here. The fifth function of Lord Shiva in Saiva Siddhanta. Now, if we see the stages of liberation in Saiva Siddhanta, very systematically they talk about it. There must be a kind, I'll just summarize it very quickly to relate to what is exactly bestowal. It's a very big, the way to talk. So I'm not just focusing on the bondage and liberation in Saiva Siddhanta. I am not talking about the concept of soul in Saiva Siddhanta. So we are not doing that. Today we are talking about the concept of God in Saiva Siddhanta. So in that we supposed to relate to this particular stage also. Now, bestowal we understand at the last stage of soul's liberation. Last stage in the sense, with the bestowal, the soul is liberated. Completely liberated, comes into the original nature of freedom, the original nature of bliss, the original nature of knowledge, everything comes there. So now the bestowal is the last stage of liberation in Saiva Siddhanta. Now, if we understand that, there is a first stage, and one particular stage is known as Malaparipaha, which means, I mean, before that, we can understand Iruvinai Voppu, of course, you just equanimity of good and bad in a way, that nature, maturity comes to the soul, and then just, the ripening of soul, which means the stage soul is ready to almost come closer to that bestowal. That is a stage in between. And the later one, bestowal, where the grace of God liberates soul from the bondage completely. Now, the fifth function of God in Saiva Siddhanta explains that level. So, creation, protection, destruction, obscuration, and bestowal. Now, God, the grace of God completely liberates the soul from the bondage. Therefore, Saiva Siddhantin understands Lord Shiva. One of the functions of Lord Shiva is bestowal. In the simplest way, we understand that without the grace of God, the soul will not be liberated according to Saiva Siddhanta. Of course, in Kashmir Saivism as well, there are other schools of Shaivism also talks about that. So therefore, we understand here, when we understand the functions of God, the obscuration, bestowal is very unique, very differently explained in Saiva Siddhanta. So now, this obscuration and bestowal, they play major role in the bondage and liberation of the process of the soul, and particularly the bestowal we understand here in relation to Shiva and Shakti also. Shiva Shakti, we understand that the power of Lord Shiva, the power of Lord Shiva is very much understood in relation to the bestowal. The bestowal is God's grace, Lord Shiva's grace, supposed to be. So now these are all the way we understand that the five functions of God. Now, friends, I would like to just summarize it here. I was just starting my lecture with just authoritative scriptures need to be understood. The 12 Tirumurais, 14 philosophical treatises are very important to understand Saiva Siddhanta. The next one, I started with the concept of God in Saiva Siddhanta. I just began with Tirumula's Tirumandiram of 115, where we understand Pati and God, Shiva. Pati is God, that is Lord Shiva. Then we understood the second one, of course, the existence of God. I mean, after understanding God, Pati as God and Shiva, existence of God, transcendence and immanence of God, and three stages of God, we understood that Nishkala and Sakala, Nishkala, Sakala, and Shakala. Then I was just briefly explained about the attributes of God, where I was highlighting along with omnipotent, omnipresence, omniscience, the love, and Shiva, where we cannot separate each. It is interrelated with each other. And the functions of God. When we talk about the functions of God, there are five functions, starting from the creation, protection, destruction. Very particular, the fourth function is obscuration. The fifth one is bestowal. So this is a way just explain very briefly the concept of God in Saiva Siddhanta. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining the talk. Now over to Modak Trainer Academy. Thank you, sir.